What's going on in our country today? Why is it going on? Well, I've mentioned Woodrow Wilson many times before and others, but this is worth emphasizing, I think. He's president of Princeton University. And prior to becoming president in 1913, he authored a treatise titled Constitutional Government in the United States. But it wasn't really about constitutional government in the United States. It was about the Constitution as he wished it to be. And he set a precedent that virtually every Democrat president since has followed. Now, Wilson wrote, "No doubt a great deal of nonsense has been talked about the inalienable rights of the individual." Remember, we've talked about this before. This is Wilson, rejecting the Declaration of Independence. And he said, "A great deal that was mere vague sentiment and pleasing speculation has been put forward as fundamental principle." This one sentence tells you everything you need to know about Barack Obama and the left. No doubt a great deal of nonsense has been talked about the inalienable rights of the individual, and a great deal that was mere vague sentiment and pleasing speculation has been put forward as fundamental principle. In that one sentence, Woodrow Wilson and every Democrat president since, and some Republican presidents since, have rejected the basis for Western civilization, the basis for the Enlightenment. Even more broadly, what cuts to the core of Judaism and Christianity: individual will. A great deal of nonsense has been talked about the inalienable rights of the individual. You understand what I'm saying here, right? Woodrow Wilson, dismissing the Declaration of Independence. In this treatise in 1908, he said, "Political liberty consists in the best practicable adjustment between the power of government and the privilege of the individual." The power of government and the privilege of the individual. He said, "And the freedom to alter the adjustment is as important as the adjustment itself for the ease and progress of affairs and the contentment of the citizen." In other words, I'll put it my way: dictatorship in the name of the people is perfectly acceptable. Dictatorship in the name of the people is perfectly acceptable. But you see, you're right as an individual. To exist is a privilege. The government has the authority to adjust its power as it sees fit. Now you get a better feel for where Barack Obama is coming from? Even more. He wrote, "The makers of our federal Constitution," meaning our framers, "followed the scheme," that is, the scheme of divided power, 3 branches of government, enumerated powers, the scheme of state sovereignty and under the 10th Amendment and so forth, as they found it expounded in Montesquieu. And they followed it with genuine scientific enthusiasm. Montesquieu, one of the great philosophers of the Enlightenment, having written The Spirit of the Laws. Wilson goes on, the admirable expositions of the Federalist, like the Federalist Papers, read like thoughtful applications of Montesquieu to the political needs and circumstances of America. They're full of the theory of checks and balances. The theory of checks and balances. The president's balanced off against Congress, Congress against the president, and each against the courts. Our statesmen of the earlier generations quoted no one so often as Montesquieu, And they quoted him always as a scientific standard in the field of politics. So politics has turned into mechanics under his touch. Here he is, rejecting utterly and completely the structure of the Constitution. That's what he's getting at. He goes on, stick with me because this relates to exactly what's going on today. The trouble with the theory of limited divided government is that government's not a machine but a living thing. This is where the living and breathing Constitution comes from. It is modified by its environment, necessitated by its tasks, shaped to its functions by the sheer pressure of life. And so you have a man like Obama, with Obamacare, with the EPA, with gun control. Because we have a living document that has to be modified by its environment. There are no truths. There is no stable law. He went on, no living thing can have its organs offset against each other as checks and live. So the government is a living thing. It's like a body, and it cannot live unless it changes and it adapts. Some of you liberals out there, you're shaking your heads up and down. What's wrong with that? Well, Wilson was a pretty smart guy, but really he wasn't that smart. He stole that from Plato in Plato's Republic, where Plato sets up, in essence, a predecessor to a communist regime, a predecessor to Islamic fundamentalism. As a matter of fact, the Ayatollah Khomeini cited Plato's Republic as a basis for his own grab and control over power and government. I'm getting too far afield. Here's the point. These are not the comments. This is not the philosophy of liberty, of republicanism. These are the comments and philosophy of totalitarianism.